I just made a really simple, oh, let me fix this. Where's the front? It looks weird. Better. Okay. I just made a simple React app. So just to create React app. And if you guys see me do Yarn, it's an alternative to doing NPM. It's just a different package manager. Same thing, Yarn start, NPM start. Okay. Oh, shit.
So even the Windows can be done with Yarn start.
What?
It doesn't matter whether it's Mac or Windows. Yeah.
No, Yarn will work on Mac or Windows. You have to install it. So if you're interested in using it instead of NPM, you just look up Yarn, install.
So I can get to install it through NPM, but then you
Yeah, something like that. It's kind of funny. Or you could, I think you could do Homebrew, but.
Oh yeah.
Okay. All right. Oh. I did not like that I did that. I hate how they do a welcome guide.
I do too.
I wonder if you could change that in settings. Like, I don't care. Okay, so I'm just going to briefly cover props, and then I'm going to let you guys play around with props because I think props make a lot more sense if you're in the code. Okay, so here, app is our main component. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to make an array in the state, and I'll call it, like, let's stick with our to-do list theme that we've been having, and I'm just going to do something like walk the dog, take out trash, I don't know, clean house. Okay, so I have 3 items in this array. So, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to render these items on my page. So I don't want to see this, I want to see whatever is in the state. So within this app, I'm just going to get rid of this stuff. I'm going to create a function, and I'm going to call it render to-do list. I think I told Sunitha this a couple weeks ago, but you'll see this naming convention a lot. Whenever you have a function that it's its job to just return JSX, you'll see it being called render blank, render a to-do list, render a button, render whatever. You can still use the word, but just remember there's only one just plain render function. That way, if another developer comes to this function, they know that this function's purpose is to put some type of JSX on the page, where as opposed to, like, if you see something that's handle, that's an event. So it's just, you don't have to, right? I can name this whatever I want, but just something a little helpful for your fellow developers or yourself in the future. Okay, so my render to-do list function, React, like I said before, we can actually return an array of JSX items, so that's why map is so powerful in React. So I'm going to return, I spelled return wrong, this to-do list in my state. Like Stephanie said earlier, big part of React and front-end development is just accessing these items and looping through them. So I first have to access this to-do list. So it's going to be this.state.to-do list. So that would access the array, but now I want to map through. And somebody tell me what my callback arguments are. Item and index. And so basically, for every item in my to-do list array, I'd want to return maybe the list item. So to the new array that I'm making, I'm going to return, just do like an li. And that's nice, right? And maybe here I would put like, just to test, I would say like, oops, gotta do something. So the first thing I would do just to test this function out is I would call the function. So you just tell it JavaScript's coming with square brackets, and then you would do this dot render to-do list and call it. Okay, so let's just see if that works. So we have 3 items in the to-do list. How many list items that say gotta do something should I see? 3, right. Okay, cool, gotta do something. That's nice, but I don't want it for every list item. I don't want to show gotta do something. That sentence, that doesn't mean anything to the user. I want to show the actual items in my to-do list. So, to do that, tell it JavaScript's coming, and then I would pass item down. If we open the console, always have your console open, by the way, just best practice. If you guys have a monitor at home, I like pop out the console. You can pop it out to your screen options, or like down here. You can pop it out into its own window, and I usually have like the console on one and the browser on one, just so you can have enough room. Okay, you'll see this warning: each child in an array or iterator should have a unique key prop. Okay, does anybody know what this means?
It means that each of those.
Hold on, Leslie was talking.
Sorry, I mean, he probably is.
Yeah.
I just remember being in the class name or in one of the divs and having to add key for item.
Yes. Cool.
I don't know where those.
Yeah, that's good. We're right there. Do you want to finish up?
So it's just every item that you listed needs to have its own key.
Yeah.
Property.
Yeah. You guys are both hit the nail on the head. Okay, and don't freak out when you get these errors. Try and solve them. Work through them. So each child in an array or iterator should have a unique key prop. Most of the time, it's going to tell you exactly where it goes. Sometimes it'll get like bundle. If you start bundling your application or using other programs, the trace will get a little harder. But with simple apps like this, it's pretty nice because it'll tell you the exact line. So here, it's going to be at the li. So basically, all that says is React saying, I need each one of these list items, give it a key so we can know what order to put it in. So it's pretty simple. Just like Leslie said, it's just key. Then you tell it JavaScript's coming. Best practice is to use the array index. You could do, I've seen people do weird things like math random or strings. You can run into issues with that. So best practice, just do array the index, which is good because we have access to that. Call it index. Okay, so now that should go away. Okay, great. Cool. So this is a pretty simple app, right? It's not great, but this app's purpose is to maybe render the to-do list. But I want a list item component that I could maybe use everywhere else through my app that I can already style. I can style it in its own component, and all I need to do is just pass down information through props. So what I'm going to do, the general rule is, best practice rule, is one component per file. Can anybody guess why that's a best practice rule? Readability, for sure. Anything else?
Probably easier to find issues.
Yeah, way easier to find issues. Way easier to find components, too. Like if you had app.js and you had all 50 components or however many components, and you had to, go through all your files just to find a list item component, it's not fast. So you want your files names to match your component, and you want one component per file. So I'm going to make a new file. You could do it in the terminal if you want. It doesn't matter. So it depends what team you're on. Our team, it's our naming convention is your component name matches your file, just so it's easy for you to find it. So I'm going to name this capital. I'm just going to name this list item. All right. Cool. So list item. When I make a new component, I do not waste time sitting there doing class, list item, extends component. You've already made a component called app. Copy it. Paste it. Oh, I forgot to.
Or if you don't know what snippets are, look that up. I use those all the time. I just hard coded in my Atom the code for a functional or a class component, and I literally type class and it.
Yeah, it'll do like a template for you. There's a lot. Look up ways. If you're like, this is so annoying, I don't want to write this out. Look up ways to make your job easier. Normally there is ways to.
If you use Atom, snippets.
Yeah, snippets are great.
Sure.
Most IDEs have them.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna call this list item. Okay, and what I do is I get rid of the stuff that I don't need. I don't need any of this stuff. Okay, so before I do anything fancy, all I'm gonna do is just render like here. Okay. So here I'm gonna make a list item. The goal for myself with this list item is I'm going to style it. So I only have to style one thing, and it'll just take information passed down to it and it'll display it. This is what's called a dumb component. It's not dealing with state or events or anything like that. It's just taking what its parent gives it and it's displaying it. In fact, if you're like, oh, well, if I don't even need anything that React gives me, like my lifecycle methods, why have class list item extends component? You actually don't have to have a React component here. You can just return JSX, and that's called a stateless functional component, and that would look something like this. And you could just, like, if I wanted to, I could just return like H3, be like, hello. And you can get props through this too. Can anybody tell me maybe an advantage of using this guy over this guy?
Looks like there's less stuff to write.
Yeah, it's a lot faster, right? Setup, way faster. Anybody else?
This? Is there something, does it have something to do with this?
Yeah, so you lose this in this instance. So you won't have access to like a this because it's not a class, right?
Vanessa, you're thinking the fat arrow function when making actual functions using fat arrow, you don't have to bind this. I think
Yes,
this is different though.
Yeah.
This is a component.
Anybody else? Can anybody see why this would sometimes be preferred?
It's returning something, is it actually rendering something?
Yeah, it's same thing. If you called this component list item, it would put it on the page. Yeah.
You use that to make the buttons in your example. Like, instead of having to write the button code within that render function, you can just make a function below and then just call it in the first render when you want it.
Yeah, you can, right? Like you can make smaller buttons. Totally. Yep.
Just because so much less code.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that doesn't have like a state or event.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Put methods in one of those.
Mm-hmm.
We just can't have a state. Is that
Correct. So basically, this is a much lighter function. It's a much lighter component. All it is returning JSX. It could still handle events if it needs to, but it doesn't have all the React code that it needs to load. So this is going to load way faster than this component. Sometimes you'll need your React lifecycle events. That's why they're there, right? They're useful, but sometimes you won't. So just know you'll see this, especially in the React docs, more and more. Also, that was an interview question. One of my first interviews, I totally bombed. He was like, what's a stateless functional component? And I knew the concept, but I didn't know the name. so you'll hear it. It's just a component with no React state. Okay.
I don't know if it's best practice, but I always start as a functional component until I'm like, nope, I need state.
Yeah.
Because they're pure and they're fast.
It would still be the same thing with the export and all the imports at the top.
Yeah. Okay, but we're gonna just do a regular component right now though. Sorry, that was a quick aside. Okay, so the first thing I do is I just do something silly like a here or test, just to make sure I'm importing it correctly and it's showing up on the screen. Okay, so we'll save this guy. So app is my parent, and this is where I'm gonna import my list item component. So how you do it is import, and it's gonna be list item, usually it'll pop up. And then from, and then its relative path, it's on the same level as app, right here. So it's going to be // and that's the same level. And then it'll just be list item. You don't need to do JS. You can if you want, but you don't have to. Okay, so now I have the component, which is cool. But I want it to show up. So instead of li, I'm going to call my list item. And you would do it just like you'd call an li. And I'm also going to pass it that key. Okay, let's see if that works. Nice. So now, how many list item components am I rendering? How many? 3. Cool. Okay, but I don't want it to say here. I want it to display information. So I'm going to pass it a prop. And in this case, I would just pass it the item as the prop, because maybe that's all I care about. And so I'm going to name the prop item, tell it JavaScript's coming, and maybe not name it item. Maybe let's be a little more descriptive. Let's do it text. Let's name the prop text. The text that I want to display on this list item, I'm going to pass it my item. And then let's do another prop. Let's do maybe text color. So maybe I'll pass it down a color prop of blue. Okay. So it's still going to say here because I haven't changed any code on the list item. But if we look at our React dev tools, here on app, you don't see props because it's apparent it's not going to have props passed down to it. We see our state, and that's cool. And if we go down to our list item component, you see we have 2 props, and I'll just show you the key, which is the order, which is nice. So our props are color and text. What type of data object is props? A what?
Object.
It's an object. How did you know it was an object?
It's key value.
Key value pairs, right? Use those context clues. Okay, so we know it's an object, so that can help us access items in that object. Awesome. Okay, so in list item, we have access to those props. If you ever forget what this.props is, and you don't have your React Dev tools open, you can always console log it. You can see it a little bit more clearly that props is an object. Okay? So, if I wanted to show this .props, because I want to show this text value, how do you guys think I would access that? Yep. Okay, so that would show me the text. Great, so now I'm passing that down. But now I want to pass down the color, because the whole point of this is I want to be able to style it in one place. And I'd actually make this more specific element. I'd probably make this an actual list item. And then I'm going to pass it a style. And when you style inline, you're going to pass it a style object. So you can just make an object here. You can also, import an object if you want. Doesn't matter. If I was going to do So font is going to be, oh, sorry, not font, my color. So how would I access my color value in my props? Yep. Cool. Alrighty, so now I have blue. But I want to style this a little more. Like, I hate these dots. Does anybody remember how to take those away?
Style.
Is it style? What is it?
Style.
Okay, thank you. I was gonna look it up, save me some time. When I play around with CSS, I always do it in the browser and then copy paste back to React, just so it'll save you some time going back and forth, back and forth. So I'd inspect these guys. Here, this is a list item. Color comes through as blue. There's a hex code picker too, if you ever need that. Style type.
List that.
Oh, list style. List style. It's none. List style is done. So here, our little bullet went away. So once I confirm that it works, I copy it. I go back to Atom, and I put it in my style. Now, in React, when you do JavaScript, like a style object, your keys can't have like list dash style. So what they do is they translate it and it goes to camel case. So anything with a dash, it goes to camel case and then it'll translate, and then get rid of that, and then none is gonna go into a string. Okay, now all of these have none. List style, okay. And I could go on and on, right? You could make these really fancy list items, maybe with the box shadow, hit you with the border, crazy, right? All right, so now I have the list item is my child component, my parent component is my app. And I pass down props from app to my list item component. Does anybody have any questions about this?
So that the double curly braces, one for the JavaScript coming in.
Yes, yeah. So yeah, you'll see this. Yeah, good catch there. So with the style, the first, you're correct, tells it JavaScript's coming, and then the second is the actual object itself. Sometimes you'll see people pull out the style object because they like that a little more, and they'll do like const style as like an outside object, and they'll do it out here. The kind of drawback to doing it like this is that you may not, if you're doing something dynamic like using this .props, you're not going to have access to it out here.
Even it's the same if you use a different CSS outside?
Yeah, so CSS, if you wanted to do CSS from an outside file, like they have app.css, you could, but you would need to do class name and use your class name there, or ID. So if I wanted to use their class name, I could pass through.
And you can still use the props.
Yeah, so you can use these together. You'll see that sometimes, because sometimes you'll need dynamic stuff that you could pass down on your style, and sometimes you'll have like default stuff that you'd want to use. Yes?
So when I was working on something, I think I did it kind of flipped.
Okay.
Where, so like in using that example,
right.
I would have done like list item, and then in the list item do like props.color and props.text, and then in the app, on the list item, I would go like color equals, like just kind of have a set of all the props listed on the actual, like what's the difference in like strategy there? Because I think mine ended up like working, but I don't know if it's like the right way to do it.
I mean, if it works, it works. Are you saying that?
So, like I did. I'll get it.
Show me
individually.
Yeah, show me later, and we can see what's going on. I mean, if it works, why not? And you'll see this a lot. One thing I wanted to show you guys, I touched on it a little earlier, but there is an ES6 technique called deconstruction that I think is really, really nice. It really helps out performance. But it basically takes an object for you. So let's say I needed this .props.color somewhere else. Like I wanted to also call this, actually, no. What it does is it says, because I'm accessing this object of this dot props, I'm accessing that object and I'm looking up color. That takes time. And then here I'm accessing the object again, right? So I'm accessing the same object. So deconstruction says, okay, we'll access the object once, and then you tell us the exact parts you need, and we'll store them in a variable for you. So we're only going to access this dot props once. So instead of going this dot props dot color, then this dot props dot text, let's do it just one time. So deconstruction is literally deconstructing an object into the parts that you need. Pretty simple. It's just const, curly brackets, and then you do the key names that you need. So in this case, my two key names are going to be color and text. Those are the two parts of the objects that I need. We do color and then text. And then equals, and this is the object that you're accessing. So the object in this case would be this dot props. So then, here, instead of this dot props dot color, I would just call it color. And then instead of this dot props dot text, I'd call it text. Because this creates a variable from the keys in this object. That's all it's doing. It's really great for performance. Also, this looks a whole lot better, right? I'm not calling this dot props. Remember the dry principle, do not repeat yourself. I'm not repeating myself. I'm not doing this dot props over and over and over again. I can actually simplify this even more. If you ever have an object where your key name is the same name as your variable name, you can take it away and just have the variable name there. And what React, or actually, yeah, it's React. ES6 basically says, okay, this is the variable name. This is also the key name. So this just makes your code look a lot cleaner. Do you have to do it? No. But you'll see a lot of this, especially in docs for like third-party libraries. So just wanted to let you know what's happening. You do not have to do this, but it is really nice to know. Also, it really does help performance.
A lot of you guys did that with setting the state, like this dot set state of input value if you to input value. I think some of you already did cut it down. Like it's the same, setting the state object,
yeah,
same once.
You can definitely do it in the state too. Okay. Any other questions about this? Alrighty. Okay, cool. Here's what we're gonna do. So I have a pretty small project for you guys, but I want you to get down and dirty with these props because I know you guys are always like, oh yeah, we got it. It looks so easy, and then we forget it. So I want you to get in there, break some shit. That's ideal. Let me stop